Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Namo Namaha. Jai Ganesha, Jai Hindu Yoga Dharma. Today's Upadesh, ice, not frozen in fear. Today, the acronym I.C.E. can produce an understandable and immediate emotional reaction. For many immigrants and immigrant communities, it may evoke fear, uncertainty, detention, separation, and the possible loss of home or family. And that fear, of course, should not be dismissed or treated lightly. But thankfully, language is never owned by only one institution, one government, or one historical moment. Ice is, of course, a natural substance. It is H2O in a particular condition. Under changing circumstances, ice can melt into water. Water rises into vapor. Vapor condenses into clouds. Clouds become rain, and rain can freeze again into snow and ice. Samsara, reincarnation, inaction. The acronym I.C.E. can become an acronym for something far more expansive. Intelligent, creative existence. So, rather than allowing these three letters to remain frozen in fear, we can also permit them to point toward consciousness itself. Existence, possessing the intelligence to know, to organize, to create, repair, adapt, and transform. This does not erase, of course, the painful association that I.C.E., ice, carries for many people. It's an attempt at something different, to prevent fear from becoming the final and exclusive meaning of the word. Hindu philosophy teaches us not to mistake a temporary form for the totality of what something can become. Again, ice can melt. Fear can soften. Rigid meanings can be transformed. And by soften, I mean make one weak. What is consciousness? Consciousness is commonly defined as the capacity for awareness, perception, or subjective experience. A conscious being sees, feels, thinks, remembers, and recognizes the world around it. Human consciousness also possesses the remarkable power of self-reflection. We can say, I am aware, I know that I exist, I know that I know. This is certainly one expression of consciousness, but is that the whole of consciousness? Such a definition may be too narrow because it carries and causes us to identify consciousness primarily with the reflective human mind. It may lead us to imagine that consciousness begins only when a being can think about itself, analyze its own thoughts, or express awareness through language. But consciousness may be active long before self-reflection begins. Consider the human body. When the body is cut, it knows how to heal. Blood coagulates. Damaged tissue is identified. Inflammation begins. New cells are formed. Skin is reconstructed. The wound is gradually closed and remodeled without really any conscious thought. The reflective mind does not direct these processes. We do not consciously tell the blood how to clot. We do not instruct the immune system where to go. We do not command the skin to rebuild itself one cell at a time. The body knows what to do. What a miracle. Imagine if you could sell a car that dented itself and could heal itself. Similarly, when food enters the body, the organism breaks it down, separates useful substances from waste, extracts vitamins and minerals, transports nutrients, stores some materials, converts others into energy, and distributes them where they are needed. Now, our intellectual mind can study digestion, but it can't perform digestion. The physician may understand wound healing, but intellectual understanding does not close the wound. The mind may know about digestion, the body knows how to digest. The mind may study healing, the body knows how to heal. This is a real form of knowledge, but it is not necessarily reflective or verbal knowledge. The body does not know through theories, it knows through participation, it knows by doing. Human self-reflection is an extraordinary capacity, but it is not always a superior mode of functioning. The body does not pause before healing a cut and ask, or cult, am I doing this correctly? It does not question whether it should regulate body temperature. It does not seek approval before digesting food. It does not become anxious about whether the heart should continue beating. It does not get a second opinion. It acts directly. Self-reflection allows us to examine motives and correct mistakes, to make moral decisions, to plan for the future, and pursue religious spiritual understanding, if you will. But self-reflection can also become a stumbling block. When we hesitate, second-guess ourselves, imagine endless narratives, and become paralyzed by our own thinking, what should be a simple action becomes entangled in doubt, fear, fantasy, and viculpa or delusion. Wisdom may therefore involve more than the ability to reflect. Wisdom may also include knowing when reflection has served its purpose and should become silent. Now, we often speak of muscle memory. That phrase is not entirely literal. Muscles do not remember in the same way that the reflective mind remembers an event. But learned movement can become so deeply embodied that it no longer requires deliberate mental supervision. A skilled musician does not consciously calculate every movement of every finger. A seasoned dancer does not verbally reason through every step. A competent martial artist does not always have time to analyze each motion before responding. A person walking does not command every muscle separately. That knowledge has become embodied knowledge. This bodily intelligence reveals that knowing does not always require verbal thought or reflective analysis. Intelligence may appear as coordination, regulation, adaptation, healing, memory of movement, preservation of form, and the capacity to respond appropriately to changing conditions. The body is therefore not merely a passive container inhabited by a conscious mind. The whole living organism displays intelligence. The mind may be one reflective expression of a consciousness already active throughout embodied life. From awareness to intelligent, creative existence, I.C.E. So we now have to expand our definition of consciousness. A simple definition, but narrow, is consciousness is the capacity for awareness to experience. This separates the rock from a being. And the broader definition now becomes consciousness is existence's power to know, organize, create, adapt, and transform. In other words, condensed now, as I.C.E, into its simplest form, consciousness is intelligent, creative existence, I.C.E. Now, the word intelligent is essential here. A rock exists. A rock may be transformed, however, by heat, pressure, erosion, impact, or time. But the rock does not ordinarily detect its own damage and intelligently rebuild itself. The transformation is imposed upon it. A living body is very different. The body does not merely undergo change, it participates actively in its own continuation. It repairs, regulates, adapts, reorganizes, and preserves itself. In other words, a rock can be transformed, a living body can transform itself intellectually. Therefore, consciousness cannot be reduced merely to transformation. Transformation may occur everywhere. Consciousness, however, is intelligent, creative transformation, operating within existence. Now we come to the Sanskrit of Hinduism. Sat and Chit. There's a familiar human expression, Sat Chit Ananda. Sat is existence or being. Chit, consciousness. Ananda, bliss, fullness, delight. But what precisely distinguishes Sat from Chit? A rock has existence, Sat. It is. But the living body does more than exist. It intelligently organizes and recreates itself, Chit. So, Sat is existence. Chit is intelligent, creative existence. Ananda, in this equation, is the warmth. And warmth is always associated with the fullness of love or joy. This does not mean that Chit should be reduced to biological activity. Rather, the body provides one visible demonstration of consciousness as intelligent organization. So Chit is not merely existence looking at itself. Chit is existence knowing how to act. It is existence knowing how to organize. It is existence knowing how to become. In Saiva language, this broader understanding approaches Chit Shakti, consciousness inseparable from power. Chit illuminates, Sakti manifests. Chit knows, Sakti acts. But ultimately, knowing and acting are not entirely separable. The body's wisdom is a knowing expressed through action. Now let's go a little deeper into Om Tat Sat Chit Ananda. Before Sat Chit Ananda, many, not all, Hindu teachers use the word Tat, that. Tat can point toward that which precedes definite name, form, category, and description. The no-thingness, shunyam. It does not necessarily indicate one supreme object or one solitary being. It may point toward no-thingness, that which is not yet any particular thing. No-thingness is not necessarily absolute non-existence or nothing. It is the absence of fixed, differentiated form. And you know we go there every single night. And because human beings must use sound, even when speaking about what precedes speech, we say, Om Tat Sat Chit Ananda. This can be contemplated as a progression. Om, vibration, sound, audible emergence. Tat, the no-thingness prior to name and form. Sat, existence. Chit, intelligent, creative existence. I.C.E. Ananda, warmth, fullness, bliss, love, and the delight of manifestation. In other words, from no-thingness, not nothing, comes everythingness. From the unformed comes form. From stillness comes vibration. From vibration comes manifestation. From existence comes intelligent organization. From intelligent organization comes transformation, relationship, warmth, life. Now, this is not necessarily a rigid chronological sequence. It is a philosophical way of contemplating the movement from the indefinable to the definable, from potentiality into form, and from being into becoming. Now, once again, ice is H2O. Liquid water is H2O. Water vapor is H2O. The forms are dramatically different, yet their underlying composition continues. Ice is solid and rigid. Water flows and conforms. Vapor expands and becomes subtle. Snow, rain, rivers, clouds, oceans, mist, and ice may appear to be different things because we give them different names and encounter them in different forms, but deeper understanding recognizes continuity through transformation. The form changes, the composition continues. When ice melts, the ice disappears, but the H2O does not. From the viewpoint of the solid form, melting might seem like destruction. From the viewpoint of liquid water, melting is creation. But from the standpoint of transformation, destruction and creation are two sides of the same event. After all, what is destruction for one form is creation for another. Creation and destruction are therefore not always absolute beginnings and endings. They may be names applied to ongoing transformation, depending upon which form we are observing. Parinamaha. The Saiva Hindu Guru Patanjali describes transformation through the subsiding of one condition and the arising of another. We call this parinamaha. One tendency disappears, another manifests. One form recedes, another form emerges. Transformation, therefore, contains both destruction and creation. The old condition must yield. The new condition must arise. If we want to begin a project, we often have to clear the boards. This is why we pray to Ganesha, the remover of obstacles. See the psychological wisdom? If we want to build something, we may first need to dismantle what occupies that space. If we want to change inwardly, an old pattern has to dissolve before a new one can become stable. In other words, transformation is dissolution, reorganization, and renewed manifestation. Life continually destroys and creates. The body breaks down food and builds tissue. It removes damaged cells and produces new ones. It sheds, replaces, repairs, and reorganizes. Living existence survives not by remaining unchanged, but through continuous change, transformation. Samsara. The transformation of H2O naturally leads to the Hindu understanding of samsara, which is often translated as the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. But we may understand it more deeply as existence continually assuming, dissolving, and reassuming form. It's happening all the time. Ice becomes water, water becomes vapor, vapor becomes cloud, cloud becomes rain, rain becomes river, river becomes ocean, ocean becomes vapor once again. The living cycle. Each condition has a beginning and an ending, yet the process continues. Now, this H2O analogy does not scientifically prove reincarnation into another life. It does, however, demonstrate a principle found throughout nature, taking on one form after another. This is reincarnation. A thing does not have to remain in one state in order for continuity to be preserved. The body may therefore be understood as a temporary configuration rather than an eternal fixed identity. Birth is a coming into form. Life is transformation within the form. Death is dissolution of form. Rebirth is reconfiguration. Samsara is existence changing form without ceasing to participate in existence. This is why death, from our Hindu perspective, need not be understood as absolute annihilation. The form ends, the process continues. This is where we come into Nama and Rupa. Hindu philosophy frequently speaks of Nama, Rupa, name and form. Human beings name the forms, don't we? We name everything. That's what we do. We name and label everything. So much for those who say we're not into labels. We have ice, we have water, we have vapor, we have cloud, we have rain, we have snow, we have river, we have ocean. These names are useful. But they may also cause us to imagine absolute separation where there's actually continuity. Because we say ice and water, we may imagine two completely different things because we give living beings different names and identities. We may imagine that each exists in complete isolation, but every form is a composite. Every body is built from innumerable elements, conditions, relationships, inheritances, environments, transformations. Even H2O is not an indivisible one. It is already a composition of hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen are themselves composed of further structures. What appears as one is often a relationship among many. Everything is a composite. Every apparent unity is a composition. Every composition can enter new relationships. Every new relationship can produce another form. There is no isolated one. As an indicator, yes, but there's no isolated one. There is continuing composition, dissolution, and recomposition. In other words, the famous Vedic statement, Ekam sa vipra bahutha vedante. Now, some often translate it as truth is one, but that can be vague or misunderstood. What's the truth and what is the one? Sages call it by many names, but this word can create some misunderstanding. Because people may imagine then a one supreme divine person. Sometimes that's what is meant. I've even heard some Hindus say one God. Which God? Which interpretation? Yeah, this needs some clarification. They may interpret the verse as a form of monotheism. That understanding may unintentionally collapse Hindu thought back into the very framework it is attempting to transcend. Now, the deeper issue is not one against many, nor must ekam mean one object, one person, or one supreme ruler. It may point toward unity, ekam, unified, coherence, continuity, inseparability. Unity is not a singularity. Singularity means one entire entity rather than many. Unity may mean that multiplicity is relational, interconnected, and not absolutely divided. The sages go on to say, Bahutha, multitudinously. Multiplicity is not necessarily error. Plurality is not necessarily confusion. Difference is not necessarily separation. Now, Hindus are often accused of worshipping 33 million gods. Of course, the word God itself is inadequate here and shouldn't be part of the Hindu lexicon. But a deva is not simply another supernatural ruler competing for control. A deva may be understood as a shining presence, shining beings, divine power, intelligence, principle, or sacred function. But this accusation usually carries another assumption. Many, in this case, quote unquote, must be inferior to the one, unquote. The expected defensive Hindu response is sadly often, no, 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 we really worship only one God. But this answer moves in the wrong direction, folks. It's accepting the monotheistic assumption that religious maturity requires numerical reduction. It implies that multiplicity is an embarrassment and that Hinduism becomes respectable only after it has translated into a one God framework. The manyness is the nature of life. Even Christopher Hitchens, the late scholar, highly critical of religion, misunderstood this one. He said humans used to believe in many gods, and with the Hindus we still do, devas. And he said then they came to monotheism, which he saw as an improvement, because in his mind it was closer to the real number, which was 0. But isn't that backwards thinking? So then reading no books is better than reading, or is the best rather than reading one book? And one book is better than reading many books? It doesn't work. That's bad math. So Hindus, we don't need to apologize for the multitudinous understanding of life. So when someone asks me, for example, Hindus worship 33 million devas or gods, I reply, no, no, no. 33 million and one. The additional one is not one supreme deity sitting above the others. It's not a solitary divine ruler added to the numerical total. The and one means that manifestation continues, remains open. Another being is born. Another relationship is formed. Another name appears. Another form arises. Another transformation begins. Existence has not finished composing itself. And after the one comes another and another. The number is not the point. The inexhaustibility, the multitudinous nature, that's the point. A universe capable of only one form would not be greater than a universe capable of countless forms. It would be poorer. Hinduism does not have to defend unity by denying plurality. It does not have to affirm one deva by diminishing another. Siva, for example, doesn't have to cancel Devi. Devi doesn't have to cancel Vishnu. Ganesha doesn't have to disappear because Muruga is worshipped. Different sampradayas do not have to become identical in order to belong within a shared civilizational world. Difference does not negate relationship. Multiplicity does not negate sacredness. Plurality does not negate coherence. The many do not need to collapse into one in order to belong together. This is one of Hinduism's most profound contributions. Don't ignore it. It recognizes not merely a unity behind multiplicity, but the sacredness of multiplicity itself and the inevitability of it. The multitudinous is not a defect at all to be explained away. It's an abundance of the understanding of what is life. Now let's go back to Ananda. Ice is H2O in a state of restricted movement. When you add heat, and the rigid structure starts to loosen, ice then becomes fluid. With additional heat, water becomes vapor, expansive, subtle, and less confined by visible form. This gives us powerful symbolically relationships between consciousness and warmth. If Chit is intelligent, creative existence, then Ananda may be understood as the warmth, fullness, delight, or love that allows intelligent existence to flow freely. Now, this is not a literal scientific claim that physical heat and love are identical, but symbolism is not arbitrary. Life as we know it requires energy transfer. Living bodies generate and regulate heat. No heat means no biological life, as we ordinarily know it. And human language also connects love with warmth. For example, to be warm-hearted, a warm embrace, glowing with love, the warmth of friendship, a handshake, a warm cup of tea, as opposed to coldness and indifference and a cold heart, frigid. Warmth suggests life, intimacy, welcome, nourishment, relationship. Coldness suggests withdrawal, rigidity, sometimes fear, isolation, and even death. Creation is not merely production. To create is often to give form, nourish, sustain, protect, and bring forth. A mother creates and sustains life. Our bodies create tissue to repair a wound. A teacher helps create understanding within a student. A community creates conditions in which people can live, learn, worship, belong. Creation often contains care. Therefore, transformation may become an act of love when it is directed toward healing, liberation, restoration, and a full life. Salvation Purnam Bhavatu. Now, not all change, of course, is loving. Not all transformation is beneficial. Destruction can be cruel. Mother Nature is not an easy lady to deal with. Those of you who have been out in Mother Nature for some time know that. However, intelligent, creative existence, guided by Ananda, becomes more than mere power. It becomes compassionate transformation. Intelligence tells us how transformation can occur. Love, on the other hand, asks what transformation serves life. So now we return to our title, I.C.E., not frozen in fear. Fear freezes consciousness into one interpretation, one identity, one possibility, one imagined outcome. But Hindu philosophy invites us to see things much more deeply. A frozen condition is not the only possible condition. Again, ice can become water, water can become vapor. A rigid name can acquire another meaning. A fearful symbol can be transformed into a profound teaching. Consciousness need not be defined only as human self-awareness. It can be understood more profoundly as existence's power to know, to organize, to create, to adapt, heal, and transform. Therefore, consciousness is intelligent, creative existence, I.C.E. Our body demonstrates this through healing. Life demonstrates it through adaptation, evolution. Nature demonstrates it through transformation, parinamaha. Samsara, reincarnation, demonstrates it through successive forms. Nama and Rupa, name and form, demonstrate it through innumerable names and appearances. The many devas demonstrate it through sacred multiplicity. And Ananda demonstrates it through warmth, love, fullness, and the freedom to flow, Saraswati, having flow. That's why she's the Mataji of wisdom, arts, purity, culture, all Hindu religious things. Now, when we speak of the Hindu science of transformation, samsara, we are not claiming that every metaphysical teaching has been proven through modern laboratory science. We are saying that Hindu philosophy observes patterns. That's why we call it dharma. also visible throughout life and nature. We know that form is temporary. Transformation is continuous. Destruction and creation are interdependent. Life organizes itself rather intelligently. Continuity does not require sameness of form. Apparent unities are composites. Multiplicity does not negate relationship. Warmth and energy sustain life. And thankfully, rigid conditions can become fluid. Existence continually assumes new names and forms. So as Hindus, we do not merely ask what exists, we ask, how does existence know, organize, transform, dissolve, and reappear? It does not merely ask, which one is real? It asks, how does reality become multitudinous? It does not merely ask, how can we escape change? It declares we can understand transformation without becoming frozen in fear. So in conclusion, we began with a word associated with freezing. We discovered an acronym for consciousness. We moved from fear into philosophy, from rigidity into transformation, and from a narrow definition of awareness into a larger understanding of intelligent, creative existence. Om Tat Sat Chit Ananda. From no thingness, not nothing, show me nothing. From no thingness comes thingness or manifestation. From manifestation comes existence. Existence becomes intelligently creative. Intelligent creativity becomes warmth, relational, and life-giving. And naturally, names and forms arise. Look at the innumerable languages around the world. And then names and forms dissolve. Existence composes and recomposes itself. That's samsara. That's parinamaha. That's nama and rupa. This is the multitudinous wisdom expressed in the shloka ekam sat vipra bahudha vedante. Not one lonely divinity opposed to many. Not one supreme form erasing all others or attempting to. Not one rigid answer freezing the abundance of life. Let this ice warm your heart. Let it awaken your mind. Let it remind you that no frozen condition is final. And let intelligent, creative existence inspire you to live a life of transformation, plurality, warmth, and freedom. And we included a collage showing the profoundness of the continent of India, from the Himalayas in the north, the frozen Himalayas, to the tropical shores of Kanyakumari in the south. And interestingly, we see Mahadev Shiva as just the silent Dakshinamurti, silent meditator, sitting in the Himalayas, showing the wisdom of silence and austerity, and our consciousness fully turned inward. But we recognize this inward nature is the potentiality, right, that then can blossom forth. And then we look at the body of India. From the mountains to the plains, we have deserts too, to the sea. Recognizing that life moves through changing conditions. So India itself becomes a map of human consciousness, of our human journey. And in our shloka Satchit Ananda, we recognize that there is pure, if you will, existence. And then that existence can also manifest into intelligent, creative existence or consciousness. That certainly the mind possesses, but it's also beyond the mind. Remember, we call our inner essence not the mind, the Atmana. And there's a great knowing there that does not really need the mind itself. Remember, we often use the analogy of the mind to the moon. And though it sure looks like it has light, especially on a full moon night, it's only reflecting the light of El Sol, if you will, S-O-L, S-O-U-L, or Atmana. And then as we proceed through India, we get to the southern portions where we have the image of Shiva. Tremendous images in Hindu Dharma that give us great teaching lessons, symbolic lessons. Learning to dance through life now. And then being able to go back into the potentiality represented by Mahadev in Himalayas. And then come out and dance through life. And it's not a coincidence that this image of Nataraja is outside of CERN, where they do the particle acceleration testing in Europe, showing the dance of life. To the warmth of the southern seas, the warmth of Ananda, the bliss. So something that also will hopefully warm everybody's heart. Our little ashram cat, Navi, gave us an upadesh. To just sit. Just be. To find simplicity in your life. To seek calmness. And yes, as humans, we want to do many, many things, but we want to work towards a sense of santoshima, or contentment, as we live through the stages of life. Hopefully, if you make it through your last stage of life, sannyas, you will want to stay close. All the outer searching has, in a sense, just naturally started to fall away. And you don't need to go anywhere, because you've realized your true home as the Atmana, which is with you wherever you are. And every day close your eyes and look inside and see what you can find. And seek to learn the lesson and the lessons that are all around us. We should not neglect the Vahanas of Hinduism. We focus often on the Mahadevas and Devis, but our little Vahanas, our little animal creatures, are teaching us so much. As we're all in this together, animal and human, striving to go from untruth to truth, humbly admitting our ignorance in many areas of life, moving towards an ever-enlightened state of being, tapping into that immortal nectar within. Om asato ma sat gamaya, tamaso ma jyotir gamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Seeking santosha, contentment, and peace, peace, peace. Shanti, shanti, shanti.